you look at him?
Oh my God.
He ripped the box.
Tan bonito también.
Yeah.
I love that he always managed to find a way to give us whatever we wanted, considering they didn't have much and they were living paycheck to paycheck.
Definitely.
My dad wanted to move to the United States to have the American dream by being a hard worker and just providing for his family. He would just make everybody laugh and just, crack jokes all the time. I remember we would paint his nails or do his hair. He would just do anything to make us happy. There wasn't much money, but there is a lot of love.
July 4th, Independence Day, Dad went to the grocery store to go get some stuff to make dinner. He did call us, just checking up on us, I think like 20 minutes prior to the incident.
911, where's your emergency?
Hi, there's somebody on 8th Street kind of stopping traffic, and it looks like he's bleeding. He has blood on his shirt.
All right, we'll get somebody dispatched over there.
July 4th in the city of Pasco is never a quiet night. But as I first got this call, it started to sound like more than just a routine injury call. I turned my lights on and I increased my speed so that I could get there quicker. When I got there, I saw a man that had blood covering his shirt, and I could tell that he had multiple injuries on his face, and blood was coming out of his mouth.
As soon as I saw my dad covered in blood, I got really scared. I just didn't understand who would do this.
It didn't make me feel good knowing that someone was a potential threat to members of my community, and I wanted to ensure that he was captured quickly.
He didn't only take my father away. In a sense, he took my mother away too. I feel like we all haven't been the same son.
He would always go to work and always talk about us and stuff and say how pretty we were. There was actually somebody that came up to him once, remember? And they were like, oh, probably just think they're pretty because of your daughters.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, he was really proud of us. I just remember growing up in a happy family. Like, we used to have a lot of fun together.
Yeah, we did.
My parents were definitely planning for children. I feel like when they found out they were pregnant with me, it was a little bit of surprise, but it was a welcome surprise. He would always tell me that when I was born, he grabbed a Sharpie and he drew a little Sharpie mark on my leg to make sure they didn't switch me at birth. Very protective always. After me, Karen is born. She was born on September 29th of 2000. And then Kimberly followed right after, March 7th of 2002. Mom was so pretty. This was at her holiday work party. When she worked at the photography studio, I think. That's when she met Dad, while she was taking his picture.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
I think he was waiting for her after her shift or something.
Yeah, he kept saying, I'm gonna pick you up. So she kept saying no and rejecting him, and he was being persistent until she said yes, and she finally caved. My parents were migrant workers. They worked out in the fields. They had to follow wherever there was work. My dad's originally from Culiacan, Sinaloa in Mexico. He grew up in a big family, very tight-knit community, lots of love. My grandma was, I would say, absolutely smitten with my dad. She loved him so much. When he moved here from Mexico, he went straight to LA, California. My dad moved over here with next to nothing. He had to start off literally from zero coming over here because he just wanted to get away from the violence in his area.
He decided to come over here because around that timing, his brother was actually killed. I guess he was scared that something would happen to him eventually.
As his brother was a victim of gun violence, they never thought that this would be essentially in the Rodriguez's family's future in Pasco, Washington.
I was around 13 when we moved here. We settled down in Pasco. I feel like Pasco was safe. I feel like it was a good place to raise a family. And I feel like my parents felt the same way. My dad always loved Independence Day. He just loved the whole celebration of the fireworks and the barbecues and just family getting together. I feel like that was really important to him. Around the 4th of July of that year, I was pregnant. I wasn't feeling well, and I did not want to do anything at all. I remember him saying, let's go see the fireworks. I want to go see the fireworks with you and your sisters. And I just kept saying, I don't feel good. I don't want to go anywhere. He's like, but I'm going to go to Fiesta Foods and I'm going to get something to eat. What do you want? My dad, he was a good cook, so he would always make some stuff for my sister while he was here. I remember getting a phone call, and I thought it was my dad. But it wasn't. Someone told me, your dad got shot. You need to get over here. I was like, stop playing with me. Who is this? And they're like, no, I'm being serious. Your dad got shot. You need to get over here.
10-7-4, we've got lots of calls about a male running around in the street with blood on his face. I believe he got hit in the face with a firework. The most recent calls have been at 15 and Lewis.
20 dispatch, I'm arriving. 15 and Lewis.
When I got there, I saw a man that had blood covering his shirt, and I could tell that he had multiple injuries on his face.
Oh my God, I'm on in. He doesn't want to go.
Oh, they got medics coming to check out. You need to sit down for me, okay?
He had one gunshot wound in the side of his face and his cheek, and I saw that a bullet had also grazed the other side of his face. And I was very concerned for his well-being, and my main focus was to get him to sit down on the curb because I didn't want him to end up passing out from the large amount of blood that was coming out of his mouth.
You just told me that that's some guy or some people, like some guy shot him or something.
He's advising it's a gunshot wound to the face.
We're staging medics.
I remember getting out of the car and I saw my dad immediately. He was on the floor sitting on the sidewalk, and I tried to run to him, and the police officers weren't letting me go up to him.
Yeah. That's your dad?
They told me there was too much blood and the paramedics were handling the situation, and I remember just being really upset and crying like, what if he dies and you won't let me talk to him?
So right now, the best thing you can do to help him right now, to help your dad, is to talk to me, okay? So you can get to there, and they're going to be giving him the best treatment they can. There's nothing you can do in there, and there's nothing you can do in the hospital yet. You'll be there for him, okay? You're doing the right thing, but I need information right now, okay? So we can try to find what happened to him and find how he got injured, okay? All right. So let's go ahead and move right over here.
Because my dad got shot in the face, he couldn't talk. So he was holding his hand to his cheek, and with his other hand, he was just making little gestures to calm down. And he wasn't telling me, but he was just signaling, like, calm down, it's gonna be okay.
The paramedics arrived on scene to help Jorge. They spent a few minutes providing care to him there, and then they rushed him off to one of our local hospitals.
I got to the car and I immediately called Karen saying, Dad just got shot. You need to go to the hospital. Go get Mom.
My first thoughts were like, is he conscious? Is he not conscious? Is he gonna need surgery? Like, what's going on? Is it that bad? We didn't know what to think at the time.
Jorge was not able to communicate anything prior to being taken to the hospital. He was not able to provide anything as far as what happened.
Where did the rest of this crime take place? Everyone was telling us that a vehicle crash had occurred in the nearby area.
Apparently the victim's vehicle was a black Escalade, should be somewhere east of here, maybe down on 8th Street.
And then when I noticed a blood trail leading from where Jorge had been speaking to us at, I followed that blood trail east toward the intersection of 14th and Lewis at the Los Pinos parking lot.
Law enforcement investigators were able to recognize that there was what appeared to be a recent traffic accident. It was apparent that this black Cadillac Escalade had crashed into the fence between a used car lot and a restaurant called Los Pinos.
When I looked inside the car, I saw blood, I could see grocery bags, and I saw bullet holes. The scene was telling me that Jorge had just been involved in a crash. It was obvious that he had been shot while inside of that vehicle. And then after the vehicle had crashed, he left and walked to where we found him at 15th and Lewis.
The police started asking me, do you know who did this? Did your dad have any enemies? Did he not get along with anybody? I was like, my dad was a great guy. I was like, I don't know who would want to do this.
Once we got to the hospital, Darlene was, traumatized by the situation just because she was the one to see my dad like that.
I was just still really confused. I kept asking, can I get an update? Can you tell me what's going on? They kept telling me, we're not sure. You have to wait for the doctor.
And I think it was after about 10 minutes or so, they were going to fly him out eventually to Spokane, Washington, to Sacred Heart Hospital.
Upon further inspection at the hospital, it was determined that Jorge had been shot in the head. The bullet had pierced his brain and his condition was serious. So therefore he was airlifted because Sacred Heart is a level 3 trauma center.
Being taken to Sacred Heart in Spokane was going to give him a higher chance of survival. I never thought my dad wouldn't pull through. He was fully conscious at the scene. He looked fine. He was awake. In my head, my dad was going to be okay. I packed him a bag with his favorite cologne, with his clothes, his favorite slippers, socks, and I put it all in a duffel bag. It's going to be all okay the next day. And, it didn't turn out that way. Spokane's about a 2-hour drive from Pasco. When we got there, we went straight to the room. My dad was in the ICU, and he was asleep. They told us that my dad was in a coma. It was pretty severe, and his brain just had no more activity due to lack of oxygen.
Darlene was the one to, communicate with everybody. She's the one that called everybody just to let them know, what happened.
I remember being really mad at everybody, and we're taking it out on the doctors, on the staff. I just kept saying, how did you let this happen? I remember even passing out, and I got admitted because I was pregnant. It was just a really scary time. And we just weren't understanding the severity of it.
We saw security cameras on Los Pinos that pointed directly to the accident scene. So we knew that it more likely than not captured what happened.
The Los Pinos parking lot surveillance footage showed Jorge's vehicle going westbound on Lewis and then crashing into the fence in the parking lot.
They also saw a person come out and exit from the passenger side of the car. And you were able to actually see this person have what appeared to be a weapon that they were putting in their waistband.
The video also showed Jorge get out of the vehicle and begin walking away west in the road to where I later found him. The surveillance video also showed the suspect attempt to remove the vehicle from the crash site, but he was not able to get the vehicle unstuck. So then the video showed him flee the scene.
From slowing down the video, we can actually see what we believe to be the actual gunshot inside the vehicle. Because there is a spark, and then obviously the vehicle is veering to its left and wrecking shortly after. The fact that it's in black and white, it makes it difficult to fully identify our suspect.
As a former FBI agent, I know firsthand that even in the 2020s, 2017 era, cameras, while they're pretty much everywhere, the footage is not always that good. A lot of times it's grainy, it's difficult to identify, especially from further away.
We have a suspect that is seen on security video, but we still have to identify the individual.
Other family members didn't recognize who this person might be. If this was a stranger encounter, where did they meet?
In this case, we knew that he had been grocery shopping at Fiesta Foods. We're able to review the video. We see our victim, Jorge, inside the store. And then we are able to identify the suspect also inside the store at the same time that Jorge was there.
The Fiesta Foods footage showed Jorge shopping, and then it showed the suspect was observing Jorge as he did his shopping.
We weren't able to get a good shot at his face, but we could see from the clothing it was similar.
The video showed when Jorge left the store that the suspect left as well.
It is unknown if they had an encounter out in the parking lot because there wasn't video surveillance available from the parking lot.
We believe that when Jorge was putting away his groceries into his vehicle and getting into his vehicle, the suspect took the opportunity to also get into the vehicle, displaying the handgun to Jorge and forcing Jorge to exit the parking lot and travel westbound on Lewis Street.
The original information was that the suspect had fled the scene and they were pursuing leads and trying to locate this individual that was believed to have been involved.
The police were really great with us. They would let us know whatever was happening next. They would contact Darlene like every so often. They would like assure her pretty much that they weren't going to stop until they try to find this person.
Police released the footage that they were able to get from the CCTV. An anonymous caller said, "I recognize that person."
The person calling in said that this individual told them that they used a .32 caliber handgun and shot somebody in Pasco.
That's an unusual caliber of weapon. And the person that the anonymous caller had identified, Pedro Cadenas, had a juvenile record. And in fact, he looks so similar to the image seen in that CCTV footage. All of it led police to think that this was a very viable lead.
After a certain amount of time at the hospital, the doctor started explaining to us that he just wasn't waking up anymore.
They were trying to tell us that he's brain dead. And there's no going back from that.
The doctors gave us two options. Option one was to pull the plug and put him into hospice care and let him pass away. Or option two was to keep him plugged in, keep a feeding tube on him, and just hope one day he wakes up. My parents were never legally married, so because I was next of kin, I was the one that had to make the big decisions. And it upset me a lot because I just feel like it was just too much for me to be able to handle. Like, I'm suffering the same way everybody else is, and the last thing I want to deal with is being the one to pull the plug.
My dad would always tell us that he would never want to be in a vegetative state. If something were to happen to him, like, he would just want us to, like, let him go.
It really sucks being in a situation like that because you just don't want to accept reality. When they gave us the options, I remember just saying, he doesn't want to live this way. And as hard as it was for the whole family to accept that was my decision.
We decided to just take him to hospice home and live off the rest of his days there.
And I remember talking about it with my mom and my sisters, and we ended up all agreeing. And although it wasn't what the whole family wanted to hear, it was what my immediate family and I decided.
Nobody thinks when they're going to the grocery store, particularly on such a great day, on July 4th, that they would end up being the victim of murder by a stranger. But that's exactly what happened to Jorge Rodriguez, and that really strikes fear in the community because if he had it happen to them, it means it could happen to anybody.
In the aftermath of a shooting like this, the biggest fear as an officer is that the suspect would continue to go out into the community and hurt others. So you want to capture them as quickly as possible.
One of the key witnesses that ended up coming forward was the ex-girlfriend of our suspect. She observed the video sequence at Los Pinos. So combined with his visual picture that was seen on the surveillance video, she was also able to say he also had that same walk.
Pedro's girlfriend tells us that they were at a barbecue in Pasco on the 4th of July, that he showed up with blood on his person. She asked him what happened. His statement to her was, "I had to do it."
When Detective Romero and his team were able to arrest Pedro and get him into custody, it felt good knowing that he was not out in our community. He was not going to be able to hurt additional people.
He was arrested for the assault against Jorge Rodriguez as well as the robbery charges. When Pedro Cadenas was taken into custody, he did not provide any further statements to law enforcement officers.
We'd always go to the arcade for Kimberly's birthday because during the winter, it was always snowing, so we had to go somewhere inside, and that's where she liked to go all the time.
Yeah, I remember that.
Dad would always make sure we had fun somewhere, especially in that timing. He wouldn't work too much because there was barely any work for the type of work that he would do, but he made it work for all of us. Yeah.
I remember you guys loved going there, but as I got older, I started hating it.
Yeah.
Considering growing up, we didn't have much. It was nice to be able to at least do this for her birthday every year.
Yeah.
Where we used to love going there.
Yeah, we did. It was about 3 weeks or so after the incident happened. We were just trying to keep him comfortable. That was the whole point of hospice, just trying to keep them comfortable until the last of their days. It was, I guess, a little heartwarming sometimes because we would grab his hand and we would feel his hand kind of grab us. They told us it could be just little muscle spasms and stuff, but we like to believe it was something else. Just him trying to let us know he was still there.
The doctors would tell us that he couldn't hear us, but something in me told me that he could hear us. I won't say what I said, but I remember telling him something and a teardrop fell from his eye. He heard me. While my dad was in hospice, he wasn't getting better. He was deteriorating day by day, and we can just tell that he was going to pass away soon.
We really didn't know like when to leave, when to stay, just because we really didn't know if it was going to be, his last day or something.
I remember my boyfriend had like a party at his boss's house. My mom was like, you should go, you need to get out of here. I didn't want to leave because something told me something was going to happen, but they were all insistent that I had to leave and get some fresh air. I remember going home to get ready, and that's when Kimberly called me, my sister, and she told me that he passed away.
Eventually, he just stopped breathing out of nowhere. I wasn't there, unfortunately. I had literally left like a couple minutes prior to him passing away.
It was kind of a sense of relief because I honestly don't know how I would have reacted witnessing it.
My mom took my dad's passing a little harder because of the way my younger sister reacted.
The one that was hurt the most was Kimberly.
Sorry.
I remember seeing her and she just got on top of him and she did not want to let him go. Like she was just sobbing and hugging him, and just seeing her that way made me so sad because as the oldest, like her older sister, I was just trying to be strong for her. But I knew I had to be strong for everybody else too, and because it just really sucked because I had never seen her. I was just trying to be strong for her.
It would have been tragic enough if Jorge had just been carjacked and severely injured by gunfire, but the fact that he was taken off of life support and died. Any evidence that they would have been able to glean from him, from eyewitness identification, that was gone now. And additionally, this turned from an assault and a carjacking into a murder case.
I remember the detective calling to say that an arrest had been made.
They told us who did it, how old he was, pretty much everything that they knew.
Pedro Cadenas was a 17-year-old man. The local police department here had some run-ins with him in the past.
His father died when he was 5. His mother, who was just 17 when she had him, was in and out of prison herself. Pedro was being raised by his older sister, who was just a few years older than him. At age 11, he got into crystal meth, which is one of the most addictive drugs and also very hard for people to essentially manage and function, let alone as a child. So these are not excuses for his behavior, but at the same time, it helps explain how a 17-year-old could go on to commit such a horrific crime.
He wanted to rob my dad, and unfortunately, the situation ended up badly for both of them.
I do believe that he was trying to fight this guy in the truck when he was trying to steal it. And I believe that's why he crashed the car, because he wasn't going to let somebody just take his car away, especially the truck that he worked so hard for.
After the arrest was made, this was all over social media. I remember his sister posting that they had a rough upbringing, and that's why he did what he did. I understand that they had a rough upbringing, but that doesn't excuse what he did. I feel like a lot of people have a rough upbringing and they don't go around killing people.
He was a complete stranger to us, was somebody like my age, and you know, for him to do something so heinous, it's like, yeah, it was shocking to us.
The days following his death were really hard with the funeral planning and trying to get everybody together. And then on top of all of that, having to worry about money. We definitely struggled financially to pay for the funeral.
We'll always be like really grateful for like the Mexican community, especially to know that they worked at a field, but everybody gave so much.
They did fundraisers, they did raffles for us. They would put boxes around in all the grocery stores.
I knew he had so many friends.
I just didn't realize how much he meant to everybody.
I remember his coworkers coming up to me and saying that work just wasn't the same anymore, that they missed hearing his cackle and his laugh every day. It felt like he was missing.
I feel like just being Mexican at the time made me really proud because it just showed me how supportive we are to one another, because I don't know what I would have done without everybody's help.
My dad's funeral was beautiful. There was actually a band over there that was playing music also. It was a beautiful thing to see.
It was just a hard day. I remember everybody paid their respects. I was beyond thankful for anybody that showed up, but I just remember it being really hard for me.
His family from Mexico wasn't able to come, unfortunately. So we had to do everything over video chat.
Just hearing another son died that way, like, they just were devastated. Especially knowing that my dad left Mexico not to be killed that way. Shortly after my dad's death, we started noticing that my mom was really sad. But we didn't think much of it just because we were all sad. She started throwing up a lot.
She would get a lot of stomach pains, and I feel like she kind of just ignored it because she had other stuff to worry about.
She would do anything not to go to the hospital. So I forced her to go, and I remember that's pretty much when they told us that she had cancer. And unfortunately, we caught it too late.
So it was pretty hard on us to find out that she was going to have only like one slip. We're like, okay, we're going to go through this again.
Yeah, estaba chingado batallando.
She's like, don't touch it. My dad's like, fuck, don't touch it.
Like my mom was trying to tell us that my dad's like soul was trying to take her.
I remember her telling me that if he was there, he would treat her like a queen. I know he would have been there all the time taking care of her. My mom passed away in October of 2018. The only thing that gives me a little peace of mind is that they're both together now. I really hope that they found each other and that they're happy wherever they are.
It'd be one thing if Pedro Cadenas had shot and killed Jorge Rodriguez, and he felt very bad and very remorseful and had begged for forgiveness, but it couldn't have been more opposite. This is a kid that was sort of wanting to live up to this, bad reputation and was doing even more while he was in jail. He was assaulting guards. He was damaging the facility. He was bragging about what he had done, really acting like nothing matters. And if anything, he just wanted to have the street cred of being so bad and really didn't care what type of consequences it brought.
Pedro was arrogant in trial. There was not a sign of remorse on his person.
Pedro Cadenas was staring straight forward. He didn't show any emotion, didn't respond to my testimony or to the video of me speaking with Jorge in any way.
I feel like he just had this smug look in his face that he did nothing wrong. I remember just holding on to a lot of anger those days. He not only hurt me, but he hurt my whole family. He not only took my dad away from me, but he also took away my mom. Because if we weren't so focused on what he caused with my dad, we would have caught what happened to my mom sooner.
We all wanted justice for Jorge because this was one of the most, sinister acts that we had seen, or at least that I had personally witnessed. This person was willing to kill another person over a vehicle. The fact is even more concerning is that it was done by a person that was 17 years of age at the time.
You have a hardworking individual that ends up being a victim of a horrific crime. So in my opinion, this was a very senseless crime committed by Pedro.
After police put together the best case they could with all of the evidence they had collected, a jury was able to return a guilty verdict in just half a day of deliberations on November 26, 2018.
Pedro ruined multiple lives by his actions. He ruined our victim's life, his entire family's life. And it could have been a contributing factor as to why their mother passed early on. Pedro was sentenced to 36 years and 2 months.
You do want to see the perpetrator go away for a really long time. You don't want there to be an opportunity for them to get back out into society. But the legal system is complicated, and 36 years is a very long time to go to prison.
There was a sense of relief, but at the same time, I can't fathom the thought that, in a sense, I feel like he got away with it. Because one day he's still going to be able to walk among us, and I find that so unfair.
It's difficult enough to have people come face to face with a killer in court. It's even worse in this case as the offender is a juvenile. So reconciling all of that in their minds, I'm sure, was extremely difficult.
When a case like this happens as a police officer, you want to say it doesn't affect you at all, or maybe it only affects you a little bit because you want to stay strong. But a case like this does affect you, and it does stay with you. You do remember Jorge bleeding. You do remember his daughter showing up and being hysterical, understandably, at the scene. And you do remember how their family was destroyed.
It's a difficult case to investigate, knowing that it's somebody that's so young and knowing his actions and what his actions caused. It's one that I won't forget.
My dad, he was 51. He was really young, and then my mom was also super young. I just feel like it wasn't their time. In a sense, our parents babied us a lot, and at the same time, they taught us so much, and they wanted us to do well in life. So in a way, they prepared us, but in a way, it kind of sucked losing them. I just wish they would be here.
We all had children after my dad passed away, so unfortunately my dad was never able to meet any of our kids.
I remember when I told him I was pregnant, he's like, "Is it for sure now?" I had miscarried before. And he's like, "Okay, I don't want you lifting anything heavy. I don't want you running around everywhere, all over the place. Like, you need to lay down."
He was excited. He even went out of his way to, grab some little slippers for his first grandchild.
I feel like my dad would have been such a great grandfather. I feel like I would barely see my kids because my dad would always be taking them. My dad would be showering them with gifts and just always being there for them. I feel like the same way we grew up would be the same way he would treat his grandkids, if not even better.
He's here in spirit, and I know he's watching over them.
Se desespera uno.
I miss him so much because it'd be nice to just get one more phone call from him and just answer it. Holidays haven't been the same. Birthdays haven't been the same. Any type of gathering hasn't been the same. And I just feel like it'll never be the same again.
I'll always miss those times where we would just hang out. I would come and help out right here in the yard or, just cleaning his truck. I adore my dad. I'll always adore my dad. He's just not here anymore.
The only message I can give others that have gone through something similar is to just keep pushing every day and be strong. You will think about it every day, but you just have to find something in your life that's worth fighting for. And just remember that your loved one would want you to keep going and remember them and appreciate the life that they didn't get to live.
The Forgotten Fingerprint, a fictional crime thriller. This is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to real people, places, or events is purely coincidental. Some crimes refuse to disappear. They wait, not in police files, not in evidence lockers, but inside the memories of people who spent years pretending they had forgotten. The call reached Detective Daniel Cross at 4:12 on a freezing November morning. No panique, no screaming, only a calm voice. "I found something that belongs to the dead." The line went silent. By sunrise, Cross stood outside an abandoned county courthouse, scheduled for demolition. The building had been empty for years. Broken windows stared over deserted streets. Dust coated every hallway. Every office had been stripped bare, except one. A maintenance worker had discovered a small metal lockbox hidden behind a loose brick inside the former records room. The box contained only 3 items: a yellowed fingerprint card, a rusted motel key, a handwritten note. You missed the only print that mattered. No signature, no date. The fingerprint card looked ordinary until the evidence technicians compared it against archived records. Every other print on the card belonged to police officers who had processed evidence decades earlier. One print didn't. It had never been identified. It had never been entered into any searchable database. Someone had marked it with red ink. Unknown. Cross stared at the faded ridge patterns beneath the microscope. Tiny loops, sharp whorls, perfectly preserved. Someone had protected this card for years, not destroyed it, hidden it. The original case file painted a grim picture. A young investigative journalist had vanished after leaving a late-night interview. Her car was discovered beside a rural highway the next morning. The engine was still warm. Her notebook remained on the passenger seat. Her camera lay on the floor untouched. She had simply disappeared. Search teams covered forests, rivers, abandoned farms, and drainage canals. Nothing. No ransom. No confirmed sightings. No body. Eventually, the investigation slowed. Months became years. The evidence room filled with unanswered questions. Now, one forgotten fingerprint had reopened everything. Within hours, a laboratory confirmed something extraordinary. The print had never been compared using modern digital enhancement. Technology available decades earlier had overlooked microscopic ridge details, now clearly visible. The new scan produced the possibility of a familial match. Not the owner, a relative, close enough to begin building a family tree. The news spread quietly through the department. Nobody celebrated. Cold cases had a habit of creating hope before destroying it. Cross reopened every witness interview. One statement caught his attention. A motel clerk had once reported seeing the missing journalist speaking with an unidentified man carrying a leather document case. Investigators dismissed the lead because the clerk couldn't describe his face. Cross noticed something everyone else had ignored. The clerk repeatedly mentioned the man's left hand. He kept wearing one glove, the witness had said. Just one. At the time, it sounded meaningless. Now it felt deliberate. Someone protecting a fingerprint. The same afternoon, forensic specialists examined the old motel key recovered from the lockbox. The engraved room number was almost unreadable. After careful restoration, the number emerged, 214. The motel itself no longer existed. It had been demolished nearly 20 years earlier. County planning archives revealed something unexpected. Before demolition, maintenance crews photographed every room. Room 214 appeared ordinary, except for one detail. A section of wallpaper behind the bed had been repaired with newer material. Cross requested the demolition records. The wall had never been opened. Nobody had searched behind it. The next morning, he drove to the county warehouse where debris from the old motel had been stored before recycling. Most of the materials were gone. One pallet remained, labeled only by chance. Room 214. Workers helped remove broken plasterboard stacked beneath warped timber. Hidden between two panels was a thin, waterproof envelope. Inside rested a roll of undeveloped film, a cassette tape, and another handwritten message. She knew what they were hiding. Cross looked toward the gray winter sky. Whoever had hidden the evidence hadn't wanted the truth erased. They wanted someone patient enough to earn it. Far away, inside a dark room lit only by a single desk lamp, an unseen figure listened to an old radio scanner. A notebook lay open beside the receiver. One page contained a list of dates stretching back more than 30 years. A fresh line was added beneath the last entry. They found the fingerprint. The pen stopped. The figure smiled faintly. For the first time in decades, the story was moving again. And somewhere between the forgotten fingerprint, the abandoned motel, and a journalist who had vanished without a trace, the truth had finally begun to surface. The Forgotten Fingerprint, a fictional crime thriller. Part 2. The film was older than anyone in the laboratory. Its metal canister was stained with rust, its label long since peeled away, and its edges carried a faint scent of mildew that only decades of neglect could produce. Every forensic technician knew a single careless movement could destroy whatever remained inside. Detective Daniel Cross stood behind the observation glass as the restoration specialist worked in near silence. Nobody spoke. The first frame appeared slowly. Blank. The second had been ruined by moisture. The third revealed the lobby of the old motel. A receptionist looked toward the camera, unaware the photograph had become evidence. The next image showed the parking lot. Half a dozen cars. Nothing unusual. Then frame 5 emerged. Cross leaned closer. A dark sedan sat beneath a broken street lamp. Standing beside the driver's door was the missing journalist. She wasn't alone. Someone stood across from her. The stranger's face was hidden beneath the shadow of a baseball cap, but one detail was unmistakable. The left hand wore a leather glove. The right hand did not. Cross immediately remembered the forgotten witness statement. The motel clerk had been telling the truth. The investigators hadn't believed him. The sixth frame was even stranger. The journalist appeared to be smiling, not frightened, not arguing. She looked as though she recognized the man, whoever he was. He hadn't approached her as a stranger. He had approached as someone she trusted. That realization changed the entire direction of the investigation. Until now, detectives had assumed she had been taken by force. Now another possibility emerged. She had gone willingly, at least in the beginning. The cassette tape, recovered with the film, contained no music, only a recording. Static crackled for several seconds before a woman's voice broke through. If anyone ever hears this, the sentence ended abruptly. A door slammed somewhere in the background. Footsteps echoed across what sounded like concrete flooring. Then another voice. Mayo, calm. You shouldn't have brought that camera. Silence. The tape clicked to an end. No names. No location. Only 12 seconds. Cross replayed the recording again. And again, something about the echo felt familiar. The sound engineer isolated the background frequencies. Water, slow dripping, large enclosed space, possibly underground. Cross made a note. Meanwhile, fingerprint specialists completed a higher resolution scan of the unidentified print. A tiny scar pattern crossed one ridge near the center, not damage caused by age. A healed cut sustained before the print was made. The computer compared millions of archive records. No direct match. One possible relative appeared, a retired machinist living hundreds of miles away. Cross and his partner drove to meet him. The elderly man answered the door with visible confusion. I already told the other officers years ago, he said. We've never spoken before, Cross replied. The old man's expression changed. What case is this? Cross placed a copy of the fingerprint card on the kitchen table. The machinist stared at it. His hands began to shake. I hoped I'd never see that again. You recognize it? No. He paused. I recognize who collected it. Cross frowned. The officer? The machinist nodded. He came to the factory asking questions. What questions? About missing inventory. What kind of inventory? The old man looked toward the window before answering. Locked document cabinets. Cross exchanged a glance with his partner. The missing journalist had been investigating corruption. Now document cabinets had entered the story. Not weapons. Not money. Records. Someone had been protecting paperwork. Back at headquarters, another discovery arrived. Archivists searching forgotten courthouse storage uncovered a property map from nearly 30 years earlier. One building had been circled in blue ink. No label, just an X. The location stood less than 3 miles from the demolished motel. Today it was nothing more than an abandoned grain warehouse. Cross folded the map carefully. We're going. The warehouse had partially collapsed years before. Broken roof beams exposed the interior to decades of rain and snow. Most rooms contained nothing but rusted machinery, until Officer Lena Ortiz noticed something unusual. Fresh dust. Everything else lay beneath thick gray layers. One narrow path had been disturbed recently. Someone had walked through. The footprints ended beside an old freight elevator frozen between floors. The doors refused to open. Ground-penetrating radar revealed an empty shaft beneath it. Maintenance crews forced the mechanism upward. Below, hidden beneath the elevator platform, lay a narrow storage chamber. Inside rested metal filing cabinets. Every drawer stood open. Every folder had been removed, except one. A single folder labeled only with a handwritten letter, M. Inside was a newspaper clipping about the journalist's disappearance, a motel receipt, and a Polaroid photograph. The image showed the journalist standing beside 3 people outside the grain warehouse. 2 faces had been scratched away. One remained untouched. A young police officer. Cross stared at the photograph. The badge number was just visible enough to read. His heart sank. The officer had worked the original investigation. Someone hadn't merely hidden evidence. Someone close to the investigation had been part of the story from the very beginning. As evening settled over the silent warehouse, Cross slipped the photograph into an evidence bag. Outside, unnoticed beyond the broken loading dock, the beam of a camera lens caught the fading sunlight for just a fraction of a second. Click. Someone had photographed the detectives. Again. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the tree line, the unseen observer quietly turned away, leaving only one fresh set of footprints in the mud before the coming rain began to wash them away. The Forgotten Fingerprint, a fictional crime thriller. Part 3. Rain erased the footprints before sunrise. By the time the forensic team returned to the abandoned grain warehouse, the muddy trail had dissolved into a field of shallow puddles and soft earth. Whoever had photographed the detectives understood the weather as well as they understood the investigation. Detective Daniel Cross stood near the loading dock, staring into the tree line where the unknown observer had disappeared. "They wanted us to know they were here," Officer Lena Ortiz said. Cross nodded. "They're not hiding from us. They're leading us." The distinction unsettled everyone. For weeks, every discovery had been placed just within reach, as though someone was carefully controlling the pace of the investigation. Not fast enough to reveal everything. Not slow enough to let the case die again. Back at the forensic laboratory, technicians examined the Polaroid recovered from the hidden chamber. At first glance, it appeared ordinary. For people standing outside the warehouse, 2 faces scratched away. One young police officer, the missing journalist. Then Brooks noticed something unusual. The damage covering the 2 unidentified faces wasn't random. It had been made with a razor blade, layer by layer, carefully enough that microscopic traces of the original image still remained beneath the scratches. Digital enhancement began immediately. Hours passed. Slowly, outlines emerged. A shoulder, part of a jawline, the edge of a pair of glasses. Not enough for identification, but enough to reveal one critical detail. One of the erased individuals was wearing a company identification badge, the same construction and logistics company that had appeared repeatedly throughout the investigation. Another connection, another thread leading back to the same forgotten business. Meanwhile, Cross reopened the personnel records of the original investigative team. One file immediately stood out. Officer Thomas Avery, 29 years old when the journalist disappeared. Transferred unexpectedly 6 months later. Retired early. Died 15 years afterward. Nothing in his personnel history explained the sudden transfer. Nothing except a handwritten disciplinary note. Failure to follow evidence handling procedures. The details were missing. The page had been removed. Only the reference number remained. Cross requested the archive internal affairs records. The clerk searched for nearly an hour. Finally, she returned with an apologetic expression. "The file is gone." "Lost?" "No." She hesitated. "It was signed out." "When?" She checked the ledger again. 3 weeks ago. Cross felt the room grow very quiet. Someone had accessed the missing disciplinary file shortly before the anonymous fingerprint appeared. That evening, Dr. Elena Brooks completed chemical testing on a motel receipt found inside folder M. The paper carried microscopic crystals embedded deep within its fibers. Not dirt, not dust, salt, an unusual type used in underground refrigeration systems. Cross frowned. Refrigeration? Brooks nodded. Industrial scale. Only 3 facilities in the county had used that type of cooling system during the early 1990s. A food processing plant, a dairy warehouse, and the municipal records archive. The archive. Cross looked toward the evidence board. The courthouse. The old courthouse had already been searched. Twice. But this time investigators weren't looking for hidden boxes. They were looking for rooms built below ground. Original architectural drawings revealed a forgotten basement level sealed during renovations decades earlier after flooding. Maintenance workers insisted it had been empty. Cross wasn't convinced. Concrete barriers were removed. Rusted steel doors creaked open. Cold air drifted upward from the darkness below. The basement stretched farther than expected. Shelves lined both walls. Most had collapsed years earlier. At the far end stood a heavy steel vault. Unlocked, inside rested dozens of cardboard archive boxes, each labeled with ordinary government records. Property taxes, road maintenance, utility permits. Only one box carried no label. Inside lay audio cassettes. photographic negatives, interview transcripts, every document related to the journalist's investigation before she disappeared. Not police records, her own research. Someone had hidden her work beneath the courthouse itself. Brooks lifted the top notebook carefully. Every page was filled with neat handwriting, names, dates, license plate numbers, shipment schedules, repeated references to late-night deliveries arriving at the warehouse. The final written page stopped abruptly. Meeting confirmed. He agreed to bring proof. If this works, tomorrow changes everything. There were no more entries. Tomorrow had never come. Late that night, technicians restored one final photograph from the recovered negatives. The image was blurry, captured through a rain-covered windshield, a dark sedan, a warehouse entrance, a man carrying a metal briefcase. As software sharpened the picture, one tiny reflection appeared in the side window. Not the man's face, someone else's. The photographer, the missing journalist, had accidentally captured part of her own reflection. She wasn't frightened. She was focused, watching, documenting. She had gone to that meeting expecting evidence, not danger. Cross quietly closed the file. For the first time, he no longer believed the journalist had simply uncovered a crime. She had uncovered a network of people protecting it. And somewhere within the boxes beneath the courthouse, hidden among thousands of ordinary records, lay the one document that had convinced someone the truth could never be allowed to leave that warehouse alive. Outside, beyond the courthouse steps, a lone figure stood beneath a flickering streetlight, watching the lights inside the evidence room. The figure waited until the last detective left. Then, without approaching the building, they slipped a small envelope beneath the windshield wiper across his unmarked car. Inside was a single key card. No note, no fingerprints, only 3 embossed words. North Storage Level. The Forgotten Fingerprint, a fictional crime thriller. Part 4. The key card was blank. No company logo. No serial number. No identifying marks. Just a worn strip of magnetic tape and 3 embossed words. North Storage Level. Detective Daniel Cross turned it over beneath the fluorescent lights of the evidence room. Nothing. No clue as to where it came from. No indication of who had left it. Only another breadcrumb from the invisible hand that had been guiding the investigation since a forgotten fingerprint resurfaced. Officer Lena Ortiz entered carrying a stack of reports. Any luck? Cross held up the card. None. Maybe it's old access control. Maybe... He stared at it for another moment. Or maybe someone wants us looking somewhere specific. The answer arrived sooner than expected. At dawn, a records technician reviewing documents from the courthouse basement noticed a repeated phrase buried within shipping manifests recovered from the journalist's files. North Storage. The wording appeared dozens of times. Most references had been crossed out. Others were partially redacted. One remained intact. North Storage Level B. A location, not a title. Cross immediately began searching historical property records. After several hours, the team identified the facility, an underground municipal warehouse built during the 1960s, originally designed as emergency storage for county records and equipment, closed after a series of budget cuts, officially abandoned, unofficially forgotten. The warehouse entrance sat behind a fence maintenance yard hidden between railway tracks and a drainage canal. Rust coated the gates. Weeds pushed through cracked concrete. Nothing suggested the site had been visited in years. Yet, when investigators arrived, Cross immediately noticed something strange. The chain securing the entrance had recently been replaced. Someone maintained access. The key card reader beside the steel door was ancient but intact. Cross slid the card through. Nothing happened. He tried again. A faint electronic click echoed from inside. The lock released. No one spoke. The silence alone felt wrong. The stairwell descended nearly 40 feet below ground. Cold air drifted upward. Every sound echoed. Every footstep seemed louder than it should have been. At the bottom, investigators discovered a massive storage complex stretching beneath several city blocks. Rows of shelves disappeared into darkness. Most areas stood empty. Dust covered everything until they reached level B. There the dust stopped. Someone had been moving through the facility recently. Fresh footprints crossed the concrete floor. Not one set, several. Cross exchanged a glance with Ortiz. We're not the first visitors. The tracks led to a secured archive room. Unlike the rest of the warehouse, this section still had power. A single fluorescent tube flickered overhead. Metal cabinets lined the walls. Most drawers stood open. Many were empty. Someone had searched through them before, perhaps years ago, perhaps days ago. One cabinet remained locked. The key card opened it. Inside rested dozens of videotapes, boxes of photographs, audio recordings, and a thick binder labeled Project Harbor. Nobody recognized the name. Cross opened the binder carefully. The first pages appeared harmless. Transportation schedules, cargo manifests, maintenance reports. Then the pattern emerged. The same trucks appeared repeatedly, the same drivers, the same destinations. Yet official county records showed those shipments never existed. Entire deliveries had been erased. Thousands of pages documented a parallel operation hidden inside legitimate business activity. Someone had spent years building the archive. Someone had wanted every detail preserved. Meanwhile, Brooks focused on a different discovery. Several videotapes carried dates matching entries from a missing journalist's notebook. The tapes were transferred to a digital format immediately. The first recording showed a warehouse loading dock. Night, rain, poor image quality. At first, nothing happened. Then a truck entered the frame. Workers unloaded several sealed containers. One container accidentally tipped sideways. Its door swung open. For a fraction of a second, paperwork scattered across the concrete. Boxes of documents. Nothing illegal. Nothing dramatic. Yet the workers reacted with immediate panic. The footage showed supervisors rushing forward. The camera abruptly cut to static. Brooks replayed the scene repeatedly. Pause there. The technician froze the frame. A logo appeared on one of the boxes. Cross felt a chill run through him. The logo belonged to the county record department. Documents were being transported secretly. Why? The deeper investigators dug, the stranger the story became. No evidence pointed toward drugs. No weapons. No organized crime syndicates. Everything revolved around records, information, files, documents someone desperately wanted hidden. The missing journalist had been following shipments. The forgotten fingerprint belonged to someone connected to those shipments. The erased police records pointed toward the same network. And now an underground warehouse contained proof that somebody had systematically removed public records from official archives. But for what purpose? Late that evening, Cross sat alone reviewing one of the recovered videotapes. Hours of grainy footage rolled past. Trucks arriving. Workers unloading. Supervisors checking manifests. Nothing unusual. Then, near the end of the recording, a reflection appeared in a warehouse window. A man standing behind the camera, watching, not part of the operation, documenting it. Cross froze the frame, enhanced it. The image sharpened slowly. His pulse quickened. The face belonged to Officer Thomas Avery, the same officer whose disciplinary file had vanished, the same officer who appeared beside the journalist in the Polaroid. Avery hadn't been investigating the operation. He had been secretly recording it, which raised a far more disturbing question. If Avery had collected evidence, where had it gone? Midnight approached. Most of the task force had gone home. Cross remained in the underground archive. Something about the shelves bothered him. Rows upon rows of boxes. Too organized. Too deliberate. As he walked between them, he noticed a gap near the far wall. One shelf sat several inches farther forward than the others. He pushed gently. The entire structure shifted. A hidden door appeared. Behind it was a narrow room no larger than a closet. Inside sat a single desk, a chair, and a reel-to-reel tape recorder. The machine hadn't been touched in decades. A yellow note rested on top. Cross carefully unfolded it. Only one sentence had been written. If you're hearing this, they never found me first. Beside the note lay a reel labeled in fading black marker. T. Avery, personal record. Cross stared at the tape for several seconds. Somewhere inside that recording might be the first direct explanation of what had happened all those years ago. Outside the hidden room, deep beneath the sleeping city, the warehouse remained silent. But for the first time since reopening the case, the truth felt close enough to touch. The Forgotten Fingerprint, a fictional crime thriller. Part 5. The storage level had been empty for years. At least, that was what every official record claimed. Detective Daniel Cross stood outside the rusted security gate just before dawn, the anonymous keycard resting between his fingers. The concrete walls disappeared into darkness beyond the reach of his flashlight. A cold draft drifted through the corridor, carrying the scent of damp stone and machine oil. Officer Lena Ortiz examined the electronic reader beside the gate. It hasn't had power in decades. Cross looked at the keycard. So why send it? Brooks crouched beside the access panel. The reader may be dead. She brushed away years of dust. But the lock isn't. Hidden beneath the corroded housing was a newer mechanical cylinder. The keycard wasn't meant to open the door. It concealed a thin metal key taped to its back. Someone had expected investigators to look closely. The lock clicked. The gate groaned open. Beyond it stretched a long underground corridor lined with abandoned storage rooms. Most stood open and empty. One door remained closed. Stamped across the steel in faded paint were two words: Agnew Bay. Inside, shelves reached almost the ceiling. Boxes filled every aisle. Thousands of documents. Decades of forgotten paperwork. Nothing appeared valuable, until Brooks noticed that every box carried consecutive inventory numbers. Every box except one. Number B, 147, was missing. There was no dust where it should have stood. Only a clean rectangular outline. It was here, Brooks whispered, and not very long ago. Cross searched the surrounding shelves. Tucked behind a stack of maintenance manuals lay a folded map. It showed the underground level in surprising detail. Most rooms were marked with ordinary storage codes. One chamber near the far end had been circled repeatedly in red pencil. Beside it, someone had written, "The copies." The circle room had no visible entrance. Blueprints suggested a doorway should exist. Instead, investigators found a solid concrete wall. Grant tapped the surface with a hammer. The sound changed near one corner. Hollow. Construction workers carefully removed a section of concrete. Behind it appeared a concealed steel door, untouched by rust. The hinges moved almost silently. Inside rested rows of metal filing cabinets. Unlike every other archive discovered so far, these cabinets had not been abandoned. Each drawer was carefully labeled: shipping, payroll, contracts, correspondence. Cross opened the first cabinet. Every file inside was a duplicate. Copies of records that had supposedly been destroyed decades earlier. Someone had preserved everything. Brooks lifted a shipping manifest. Several names had been crossed out by hand. New names written above them. The originals were altered, she said quietly. These are the unedited versions. For the first time, investigators could compare the official history with the truth. The differences were everywhere. Vehicle numbers changed. Delivery times rewritten. Employee signatures forged. It wasn't random corruption. It was systematic. Someone had rewritten the past one page at a time. Hours later, forensic accountants reconstructed the sequence of alterations. Nearly every falsified record traced back to a single week. The same week the journalist disappeared. Cross circled the dates on the evidence board. Whatever happened, that started here, Ortiz finished. Brooks remained focused on another document, an internal memo, and signed, typed on company letterhead. Only one sentence had been underlined. Destroy originals after transfer is complete. Transfer, the word appeared again. It matched the note found months earlier inside the hidden blueprint room. Records transferred. Inspection canceled. The puzzle pieces were beginning to align. That evening, technicians restored audio from a damaged cassette recovered beneath the courthouse. Static filled the room before two voices emerged. The first belonged to the journalist, calm, determined. If these copies disappear, they'll erase everything. Another voice answered, you shouldn't keep them together. I don't have another choice. Someone knows. A long silence followed. Then came the sound of footsteps. A door opening. The recording ended. No struggle. No scream. Only silence. Cross replayed the tape several times. She hadn't sounded afraid. She had sounded certain. Certain that someone was already closing in. Near midnight, Brooks made one final discovery. The paper used in the duplicated records contained microscopic blue fibers unique to a small printing company that had closed more than 30 years earlier. The owner had died. The business had vanished. But one employee was still alive, retired, living quietly under a different surname in another state. Cross stared at the personnel file. If anyone knows who made these copies, then it's him, Brooks replied. Before anyone could continue, the lights inside the incident room flickered. The emergency power kicked in. Computers shut down for several seconds. When the monitors came back online, one file had disappeared. Not corrupted. Deleted. The surveillance cameras showed no intruder. No unauthorized access. Only a single message left on Cross's workstation. White letters against a black screen. You found the copies. Now find the original. The message vanished before anyone could trace its source. No fingerprints. No malware. No obvious point of entry. Only another reminder that someone was watching every step of the investigation. Outside headquarters, hidden beyond the reach of the parking lot lights, an engine started quietly. A dark sedan pulled away without headlights. Its driver glanced once in the rearview mirror. On the passenger seat rested a weathered leather folder. Stamped across the cover in faded gold lettering were two words that no investigator had yet seen. Master File, The Forgotten Fingerprint, a fictional crime thriller. Part 6. The sedan disappeared before dawn. Traffic cameras caught only fragments of its journey. A blurred silhouette beneath rain-soaked streetlights, a pair of headlights slipping through empty intersections, a shadow crossing a bridge before vanishing into the darkness beyond the county line. Detective Daniel Cross watched the footage in silence. Every frame ended the same way. Too late. Whoever possessed the master file knew exactly how to avoid becoming a face in the system. Someone wasn't just hiding. Someone understood investigations. Inside headquarters, the task force gathered around the evidence board. The anonymous message still echoed through everyone's mind. You found the copies. Now find the original. Brooks pinned a photograph of the leather folder beside the recovered documents. If copies exist, she said, someone intended to preserve information. Cross nodded. And if there's a master file, it contains everything. No one argued. Every discovery over the past weeks suddenly felt like scattered chapters torn from the same book. The fingerprint, the motel, the warehouse, the hidden archive, the duplicated records. Each clue pointed toward a single missing piece. The surviving employee from the old printing company agreed to meet only after Cross promised conversation would remain confidential. Walter Green was 83 years old. His eyesight had faded. His memory had not. Cross placed several recovered documents on the table. Walter recognized the paper immediately. I printed these. You remember them? I remember because we were paid in cash. Who hired you? Walter shook his head. I never met the client. Did you know what you were printing? No. He paused. Not at first. Cross waited. The originals came with handwritten notes. What kind of notes? Walter closed his eyes for a moment. They weren't business records. They were evidence. Brooks leaned forward. Evidence of what? Walter looked from one detective to another. I don't know, but I remember one sentence. What was it? He spoke slowly, carefully. If these disappear, the truth disappears with them. The room fell completely silent. Walter continued. We weren't making business copies. We were making insurance. The phrase lingered long after the interview ended. Insurance, not financial. Historical. Someone had duplicated every critical document because they expected the originals to be destroyed. Cross returned to headquarters convinced the journalist had not been working alone. Someone inside the system had helped preserve the evidence. The question was no longer who committed the crime. The question was who secretly fought against it. That afternoon, Brooks re-examined the fingerprint card under ultraviolet light. For the first time, faint pressure marks became visible along the paper's lower edge. Not ink, indented writing left by another sheet that had once rested on top. Digital enhancements slowly reconstructed the hidden impression. Only part of the message survived. Locker, 27, East. The final words had faded beyond recovery. Cross looked toward Brooks. Could be a storage locker? It's possible. Or an evidence locker. County records revealed 3 different facilities that once used number lockers. The courthouse, the railway freight depot, the municipal bus terminal. The freight depot had closed years earlier. Most of its contents had been auctioned. The bus terminal had been renovated. Only the courthouse still retained its original basement storage system. Investigators descended into forgotten lower level once again. Rows of rusted steel lockers stretched across the corridor. Many doors hung open. Several had collapsed. Locker 27 remained closed. The lock had never been forced. Brooks carefully opened it. Inside rested nothing more than an old canvas satchel. Dust covered every inch. No one had touched it in decades. Cross unzipped the bag. Inside lay a portable tape recorder, a notebook, and dozens of audio cassettes, each one labeled only by date. The recorder still contained batteries. Dead, of course. The laboratory powered it using an external supply. A cassette clicked into place. Static. Then the unmistakable voice of the missing journalist. If you're hearing this. A pause. I wasn't able to finish. Cross felt every eye in the room shift toward the speaker. I've copied everything. They think destroying documents will erase what happened. They're wrong. The tape crackled. Another voice interrupted somewhere in the background. A door closed. Footsteps approached. The journalist spoke again, much faster. The master file is real. It's not in the warehouse. It's where no one would ever think to search because everyone assumes it's already empty. The recording ended abruptly. No explanation. No location. Just another piece of a puzzle carefully scattered through time. Brooks replayed the final sentence again and again. Everyone assumes it's already empty. Cross walked to the evidence board. His eyes moved across every location they had searched. The motel, the courthouse, the warehouse, the archive, the storage rooms. Then he stopped. There was one place everyone had ignored after the first week. The old county evidence vault. Officially abandoned. Officially cleared. Officially empty. Cross slowly smiled. I think she just told us where to go. Before anyone could respond, every phone inside headquarters vibrated at exactly the same moment. An anonymous email had arrived simultaneously on every investigative account. No sender. No subject. Only a single scanned photograph. It showed a younger version of the missing journalist standing beside an unidentified man inside the county evidence vault. On the wall behind them, barely visible in fading paint, were 2 handwritten words that had escaped notice for more than 30 years. Keep copies. Cross looked at the image for a long moment. Whoever had been guiding them wasn't merely revealing evidence anymore. They were accelerating the investigation. Because somewhere, someone else was getting closer to the master file too. The Forgotten Fingerprint, a fictional crime thriller. Part 7. The email arrived without a trace. No originating server. No recoverable route. No metadata beyond a timestamp that matched the exact second every investigator's phone vibrated. Detective Daniel Cross stared at the scanned photograph projected across the conference room wall. The missing journalist stood inside the old county evidence vault, smiling faintly at the camera. Beside her stood an unidentified man, his face partially obscured by a stack of archive boxes. Behind them, almost invisible beneath peeling paint, were 2 handwritten words. Keep copies. Cross had seen enough anonymous clues to recognize a pattern. None of them were random. Each appeared only after the investigation reached a dead end. Someone wasn't solving the mystery for them. Someone was making sure they never stopped asking the next question. By noon, the task force stood inside the abandoned evidence vault. The room had officially been emptied more than 25 years earlier. Metal shelving lined the walls. Most compartments stood open, coated with thick layers of dust. Every inventory list claimed the vault contained nothing. Brooks wasn't interested in the shelves. She examined the floor. Look at this. Cross knelt beside her. Fine scratches crossed the concrete in parallel lines. They're recent, Brooks said. Something heavy was moved. Recently? She nodded. Within the last few years. Not decades. Years. Someone had entered the supposedly abandoned vault long after it had been closed. Ground-penetrating radar revealed another anomaly, a rectangular cavity beneath the center of the room. Construction workers carefully removed several concrete tiles. Underneath lay a steel hatch concealed beneath insulation and reinforcing mesh. The hatch opened with surprising ease. Cold air drifted upward from the darkness below. A narrow staircase descended into a chamber no county blueprint had ever documented. Officer Lena Ortiz swept her flashlight across the room. Metal cabinets, wooden crates, dust-covered tables. Nothing appeared disturbed, until Cross noticed a single chair positioned beneath a hanging light bulb. Someone had sat there. Recently, on the table rested a reel-to-reel tape recorder connected to an aging power supply. The electricity had long since failed, but someone had left the machine prepared. Waiting, back at the forensic laboratory, technicians restored the magnetic tape. The recording began with several seconds of silence. Then the journalist's voice filled the room. If this recording exists... She paused. Then someone kept their promise. Cross leaned closer. I don't know how much time I have. I've copied every document I could find. They think the records of the story. They're wrong. The sound of paper turning echoed through the speakers. The documents explain what happened, but not why. Another pause. The answer isn't inside a file. It's inside a person. Static crackled violently. Then another voice entered the recording. Calm. Older. Male. You have to leave. I can't. They know you're here. I know. The tape stopped. No stragel. No gunshot. Only silence. The phrase echoed through headquarters for the rest of the afternoon. The answer is inside a file. Cross erased 3 names from the suspect board. Then 2 more. Brooks watched without speaking. We've been chasing documents, Cross said quietly. The documents only point to people. And one of those people is still alive. While analysts reviewed the tape, Ortiz examined a hidden chamber beneath the vault one final time. Behind a loose wooden panel, she discovered something everyone else had overlooked. A narrow envelope sealed with brittle wax. Inside rested a faded train ticket, a motel receipt, and a photograph. Unlike every previous image, this one had never been damaged. It showed 6 people gathered around a conference table. The missing journalist sat near the end. The unidentified gloved man stood by the doorway, and beside him, a child, no older than 10. Cross frowned. A child doesn't belong in that meeting. Brooks enlarged the image. The child wasn't listening. He was looking directly into the camera, as though he knew the photograph would matter someday. Written across the back, in neat handwriting, were 7 words. He saw everything. He told no one. The investigation shifted overnight. The child became the highest priority. Age progression specialists estimated he would now be in his early 40s. Old school records, census documents, and newspaper photographs were compared one by one. Hundreds of possibilities. Then Brooks stopped scrolling. There, a class photograph from the early 1990s. The ears, the jawline, the same slight tilt of the head. The resemblance wasn't perfect. Time had changed him, but it was enough. Cross looked at the name beneath the picture. Michael Rowan. No criminal history. No connection to the investigation. At least not on paper. Current occupation. Archivist. County Historical Records Center. Cross slowly exhaled. The whole time, he's been surrounded by old files. Ortiz finished. Before detectives could arrange an interview, dispatch called. Michael Rowan had left work unexpectedly. His apartment stood empty. Neighbors reported seeing him loading several cardboard boxes into a dark sedan less than an hour earlier. No destination. No forwarding address. Cross hurried back to the evidence board. Every anonymous clue, every hidden archive, every preserved document, every carefully protected cassette. Someone had spent decades preserving history. Who better than an archivist? Was Michael Rowan the anonymous guide, or was someone else following him? That night, Brooks received one final laboratory result. The unidentified fingerprint recovered from the original card was compared against microscopic touch DNA collected from the wax seal on the newly discovered envelope. The profiles were consistent. The same unknown individual had handled both items, 30 years apart, which meant one impossible thing. Whoever left the fingerprint all those years ago had remained connected to the hidden evidence ever since. They hadn't vanished. They had been quietly guarding the truth. Outside headquarters, rain began to fall once again. Across the parking lot, beneath the dim glow of a street lamp, a courier van rolled silently to a stop. The driver never stepped out. Instead, a small parcel was placed on the curb before the vehicle disappeared into the darkness. Inside the parcel rested a single cassette tape. A typed label had been fixed to the front. "Play this before you find me." The Forgotten Fingerprint, a fictional crime thriller. Part 8. The cassette arrived without a return address. No fingerprints. No DNA. No postal markings. Only a plain black plastic case with a white type label. "Play this before you find me." Detective Daniel Cross placed it carefully on the evidence table. No one reached for the player. For several long seconds, the room remained silent. "If this is another trap?" Officer Lena Ortiz asked. Cross looked at Dr. Elena Brooks. "We've tested everything?" She nodded. No explosives. No chemical hazards. Nothing unusual. Cross pressed the play button. The tape hissed. Static filled the room before a familiar voice emerged. Not the missing journalist. The unknown guide. "If you're listening to this, you've already found the vault." A pause. "Good. You've also discovered that the records were only copies." Another pause. "The originals were never meant to survive." Cross leaned closer. "You're looking for one person." "Stop. The truth belongs to several." Paper rustled somewhere near the microphone. "I've spent 30 years protecting evidence that was never mine. I couldn't go to the police. I couldn't destroy it. So I waited." The voice remained calm, measured, almost emotionless. "When you find Michael Rowan, don't ask him what happened. Ask him what he inherited." The tape clicked to an abrupt stop. No forguel, no explanation, only another question. The task force immediately shifted its focus, not to finding Michael, to understanding him. Brooks reconstructed his employment history. He had worked in archives since his early 20s. Every position involved preserving historical records. Every promotion brought him closer to restricted collections. Nothing suggested criminal activity. Everything suggested someone obsessed with keeping the past intact. Cross studied the timeline. He wasn't hiding evidence. He was protecting it. Meanwhile, technicians enhanced the audio from the anonymous cassette. Behind the speaker's voice, they isolated another sound. A clock. Old mechanical gears. A bell striking every 15 minutes. Brooks searched historical building records. Only 4 public buildings in the county still used mechanical tower clocks. 3 had been modernized. 1 remained untouched. The abandoned Hawthorne Railway Station, closed for nearly 20 years. The station stood at the edge of town where weeds had swallowed the tracks, and shattered windows reflected the gray afternoon sky. Dust covered the ticket counters. Broken benches lined the waiting hall. The clock tower still stood above everything. Its gears continued turning with slow, rhythmic precision. Cross climbed the narrow spiral staircase. Each step echoed through the empty tower. Halfway up, He noticed fresh boot prints in the dust. Someone had climbed these stairs recently. Very recently. At the top, hidden behind a massive clock mechanism, stood a small wooden cabinet. Inside rested dozens of magnetic tapes, each one numbered, not dated, numbered. Brooks carefully removed the first, then the second, then the third. There are at least 50. Cross opened the cabinet's lower drawer. A leather notebook rested inside. Its first page contained only one sentence. History survives because someone refuses to burn it. Back at headquarters, the tapes were cataloged one by one. Each contained fragments, conversations, interviews, ambient recordings, notes dictated by the missing journalist during her investigation. She had documented everything. One recording changed the case completely. "I'm meeting someone tonight." Her voice sounded tired but determined. "They say they have proof. If I don't come back..." She stopped speaking for several seconds. "Don't let them destroy the copies." Cross closed his eyes. For decades, everyone had assumed she disappeared because of what she already knew. Now it seemed she vanished because of what she was about to receive. Late that evening, Brooks made another discovery. The leather notebook on the clock tower contained faint impressions left by pages that had once been removed. Using forensic lighting and digital enhancement, hidden words slowly emerged. Not sentences, coordinates, a list of dates, and one repeated phrase. Box 7. Cross-checked every piece of recovered evidence. No box carried that label. No archive inventory mentioned it. Yet the phrase appeared 6 separate times. Someone wanted investigators to find Box 7. Before midnight, Dispatch received an unexpected call. A night security guard at the County Historical Records Center reported signs of forced entry. Cross and Ortiz arrived within minutes. Nothing appeared stolen. Nothing overturned. Only one empty space remained inside the climate-controlled archive. A storage crate had vanished. Its inventory number, Box 7. Cross stared at the empty shelf. They knew we were coming. Brooks looked toward the open loading door, where cold wind drifted through the building. "No," she spoke almost in a whisper. "They've always been one step ahead." Outside, beyond the security lights, tire tracks disappeared onto the rain-soaked road. Whoever had taken Box 7 hadn't taken it to destroy it. They had taken it because, after 30 years of silence, the final chapter of the story was finally beginning to move. The Forgotten Fingerprint, a fictional crime thriller. Part 9. The empty shelf said more than any witness ever could. Detective Daniel Cross stood motionless inside the climate-controlled archive, his flashlight resting on the rectangular patch of dust where Box 7 had sat only hours before. Everything around it remained perfectly organized. Every neighboring crate was untouched. Whoever entered the building hadn't been searching. They had known exactly what they wanted. Officer Lena Ortiz followed the faint impressions left by the missing crate across the polished concrete floor. The marks ended at a service elevator that hadn't appeared on any public floor plan. "It shouldn't even be operational," she said. Brooks examined the control panel. "It isn't." She removed the faceplate, revealing a second switch hidden behind decades of wiring. Someone had modified the elevator years ago. Cross pulled the lever. The machinery groaned to life. Far below, gears that should have been frozen began turning. The elevator descended. The lower level was colder than the archive above. Rows of compact shelving stretched into darkness, interrupted only by narrow aisles and old fluorescent lights that flickered uncertainly back to life. Dust coated almost everything. Almost. A single aisle showed fresh footprints. Cross raised his flashlight. Stay together. The trail ended at a reading table. Box 7 wasn't there. Instead, a small digital recorder rested neatly in its place. A green light blinked. Recording. Cross pressed stop. The screen displayed a timestamp from less than 10 minutes earlier. He rewound the file. A calm voice filled the silent room. "If you've reached this room, you're finally asking the right questions." It was the same anonymous narrator from the earlier cassette. "You think Box 7 contains the answer. It doesn't. It contains a question everyone overlooked." The voice paused. The documents were never the most valuable evidence. The people who protected them were. The recording ended. Nothing more. Back upstairs, Brooks examined the recorder. No prints. No usable DNA. But there's something interesting. She pointed toward microscopic fibers caught beneath the battery cover. Dark blue wool. Unlike anything recovered before. Cross looked toward the evidence board. Our anonymous guide made a mistake. Or wanted us to think they did. Ortiz replied. Neither possibility felt reassuring. Hours later, forensic analysts finished reconstructing the inventory history of Box 7. It had changed locations 7 different times over 3 decades. Each transfer carried the same authorization code. Not a name, just 2 initials. H. Cross searched every archived employee list. Nothing. Brooks searched retired staff. Nothing. Then she widened the search to maintenance contractors. One result appeared. Richard Hale, building engineer, responsible for secure storage systems throughout the county during the 1990s. Officially retired. Officially deceased. Except there was no death certificate. Only a newspaper obituary submitted by an unknown sender. No burial record. Brooks said quietly, No provat. No hospital report. Cross looked up. So, we don't actually know that he's dead. Late that evening, Michael Rowan finally made contact. Not in person. An envelope arrived beneath the door of the incident room. Inside was a single library card. The back carried a handwritten message. I didn't steal Box 7. I was trying to find it before they did. No signature. But Cross recognized the handwriting from a notebook discovered inside the clock tower. Michael wasn't running from the investigation. He was running from someone else. The team traced the library card to a forgotten branch scheduled for demolition. Most of the shelves had already been removed. Only the basement remained intact. Cross unlocked the door just after midnight. The room smelled of old paper and damp concrete. Books lay stacked in uneven towers. Near the back wall stood a reading desk illuminated by a lone brass lamp. Someone had been there recently. An open notebook rested beside a steaming cup of coffee that had gone cold only minutes earlier. Michael had missed them. Barely. Cross opened the notebook. Every page contained names. Archivists, clerks, custodians, maintenance workers, not suspects, caretakers, people who had quietly preserved fragments of the truth across 30 years without ever meeting one another. The final page contained only one sentence. No one protected the whole story. Each person protected one piece. Cross slowly closed the notebook. For the first time, he understood the scale of what they were uncovering. This had never been the work of a single secret keeper. It was a chain. One person handed a fragment to the next. One generation trusted another, not to hide the truth forever, but to keep it alive until someone could finally understand it. As Cross slipped the notebook into an evidence bag, a faint sound echoed to the empty library. A door closed somewhere upstairs. He and Ortiz sprinted toward the staircase. By the time they reached the entrance, the street outside was empty. Only a folded map remained on the library steps, weighted down by an old brass compass. A red circle marked a single location on the edge of the county. Beside it, in neat block letters, someone had written, "The Last Keeper is Waiting. The Forgotten Fingerprint, a fictional crime thriller. Part 10. The map led nowhere. At least, that was what the GPS insisted. Detective Daniel Cross turned off the highway and followed a narrow gravel road that wound through dense pine forest before ending at a rusted chain stretched across an abandoned service path. Beyond it stood a weather-beaten fire lookout tower overlooking miles of empty wilderness. The compass left with a map pointed directly toward it. Officer Lena Ortiz stepped from the SUV and scanned the silent landscape. No vehicles. No footprints on the road. Cross looked toward the tower. Someone wanted us here. The climb felt endless. Each wooden step groaned beneath their boots, the old structure swaying gently in the morning wind. At the top, the observation room appeared untouched by time. Dust coated the floor. Old maps covered one wall. A cast-iron stove sat cold in the corner. Then Brooks noticed something different. One chair was perfectly clean. Someone had been sitting there recently. A weatherproof storage case rested beneath the window overlooking the forest. Cross opened it carefully. Inside lay a stack of journals, each numbered rather than dated. One envelope rested on top. It was addressed simply, "To whoever finally asked why." Cross unfolded the letter. If you've come this far, you've already discovered that no single person held the whole truth. That was intentional. We divided it because we believed no one could erase every piece at once. We were wrong about many things. We were right about one. Someone eventually came looking. There was no signature, only a small symbol pressed into the paper. The same symbol Brooks had found faintly embossed on several archive folders recovered months earlier. The first journal wasn't a confession. It was a log. Every few pages described one transfer of evidence from one anonymous caretaker to another. No real names, only initials. One person safeguarded photographs. Another preserved recordings. Someone else hid financial records. The final pages stopped several years earlier. The last entry read, "The chain is almost broken. Find the archivist before they do." Cross looked up. Michael. Brooks nodded. He wasn't the beginning. He was the latest keeper. Back at headquarters, technicians digitized every page. The journals revealed a network of ordinary people connected by one promise. None of them claimed to know the complete story. None tried to solve the mystery alone. Each simply protected one fragment until it could safely be passed to the next person. The pattern explained everything. Why evidence had surfaced gradually. Why anonymous messages appeared only when investigators stalled. Why no single cache contained every answer. The truth had survived because it had never been stored in one place. Late that afternoon, Ortiz received a call from a ranger station 30 miles north of the lookout. A man matching Michael Rowan's description came through here yesterday. Was he alone? I think so. Think. The ranger hesitated. He kept looking over his shoulder. What direction? He wasn't running from the forest. The ranger's voice dropped. He was running toward people. That night, Cross replayed every anonymous recording recovered so far. He stopped on one sentence that had seemed insignificant before. Don't ask Michael what happened. Ask him what he inherited. Now it made sense. Michael wasn't carrying secrets because he had created them. He carried responsibility. The journals confirmed it. Each keeper inherited evidence from the previous one. Not ownership. Duty. Cross quietly closed the recorder. We've been treating him like a witness. Brooks finished the thought. When he's actually the next link in the chain. As rain began falling outside headquarters, a courier entered the lobby carrying a sealed archival tube. No return address. No paperwork. Only Cross's name written neatly across the side. Inside was a single sheet of heavy drafting paper. It wasn't a map. It was a floor plan. An unfamiliar building. One room had been circled in red. Across the bottom margin, someone had typed 6 words. This is where the chain began. Cross studied the drawing for a long moment. There were no street names, no town, no coordinates, only the unmistakable feeling that, after following scattered fragments across abandoned motels, forgotten vaults, hidden archives, and silent lookout towers, the investigation was finally approaching the place where the first decision had been made. The moment when someone chose not to destroy the truth, but to hide it until the right people arrived to uncover it. The Forgotten Fingerprint, a fictional crime thriller. Part 11. The floor plan offered no address, no county seal, no architect's signature, just precise measurements, faded pencil revisions, and a single room outlined in red. Detective Daniel Cross spread the drawing across the conference table, while Dr. Elena Brooks compared against hundreds of archive blueprints. Schools, courthouses, warehouses, libraries, none matched. Then Brooks stopped, rotated. Cross turned the page 90 degrees. The room changed shape. It isn't a building, Brooks whispered. It's an addition. She overlaid the drawing on an aerial survey from the early 1990s. The lines aligned perfectly. The mysterious room had once existed beneath the east wing of the old county museum, a section demolished after a boiler explosion nearly 3 decades earlier. Official reports claimed the basement had collapsed beyond repair. No one had excavated it. No one had rebuilt it. Everyone assumed nothing remained. By sunset, the task force stood behind temporary fencing surrounding the abandoned museum grounds. The cracked stone facade leaned slightly forward, windows boarded shut against years of neglect. Cross studied the red circle room on the blueprint. If the drawing is accurate, the entrance won't be inside. Ortiz looked around the overgrown courtyard. Then where? Brooks pointed toward a dry ornamental fountain buried beneath vines. The addition was built underneath. Excavation crews carefully cleared away debris. Beneath the fountain lay a cast-iron maintenance hatch, sealed beneath layers of concrete poured long after the museum had closed. Someone hadn't simply abandoned the entrance. Someone had hidden it. The hatch opened with a deep metallic groan. Cold air rose from below. A narrow spiral staircase descended into darkness untouched by daylight. Flashlights swept across brick walls lined with shelves. Unlike every archive they had discovered before, this room contained almost nothing. One wooden desk, 2 chairs, a locked cabinet, and a large wall map covered with colored pins. Cross approached slowly. The pins marked every location they had visited: the motel, the grain warehouse, the courthouse, the railway station, the lookout tower, even the library. Someone had been tracking the investigation long before the anonymous messages began. Brooks opened the desk drawer. Inside lay dozens of index cards. Each carried the name of a different caretaker. Some names were crossed out. Others had dates beside them. One card remained untouched. Michael Rowan. No date. No mark. Only his name. The locked cabinet contained no files. Instead, it held a battered 35mm projector and a single film reel labeled Beginning. The laboratory cleaned the film overnight. The next morning, investigators gathered inside a dark viewing room. The projector rattled to life. Grainy black and white footage flickered across the screen. The missing journalist appeared, adjusting the camera. She laughed at someone standing behind it. "This isn't evidence," she said. "Not yet." The unseen cameraman answered. "Someday it might be." The image shifted. Several people sat around a long table covered with folders and cassette tapes. No faces were fully visible. Only hands, documents, coffee cups, ordinary people discussing extraordinary risks. Then the journalist looked directly into the camera. "If you're watching this years from now," she smiled, "it means somebody kept their promise." The screen went white. The reel ended. No revelation, no confession. Only proof that the network of caretakers had existed long before anyone disappeared. Cross replayed the final sentence 3 more times. Somebody kept their promise. He looked toward Brooks. The chain didn't survive by accident. Brooks nodded. It survived because every generation believed someone else would eventually finish what they couldn't. That afternoon, forensic analysts discovered a hidden compartment inside the projector case. A folded sheet of tracing paper had been tucked beneath the mechanism. Unlike the previous blueprint, this one contained handwritten annotations, measurements, arrows, distances. At the bottom, a final instruction. When the archive is complete, return everything to the river. Ortiz frowned. Return what? Cross looked toward the evidence wall. Maybe not the evidence. The story. As night settled over headquarters, dispatch interrupted the briefing. A local fisherman had reported finding a waterproof metal container lodged beneath the supports of an old bridge after heavy rain lowered the river level. The description matched none of the evidence already recovered. Cross drove through the darkness with Ortiz close behind. The container was scratched, dented, and coated in mud. Its seal remained intact. Brooks carefully released the latches. Inside rested a single leather-bound notebook wrapped in oilcloth. No title, no author's name, only one line written across the first page. If this book has been opened, the last keeper has already made a choice. Cross slowly turned to the next page. Outside, beyond the flashing lights of the investigation vehicles, an unseen figure stood silently among the trees for a brief moment before disappearing into the darkness, leaving behind nothing but the faint sound of footsteps fading into the night. The Forgotten Fingerprint, a fictional crime thriller. Part 12. The notebook was surprisingly light. Detective Daniel Cross held it with both hands, as though the brittle leather might crumble beneath his fingertips. Water stains darkened the edges, but the pages inside remained perfectly dry, protected by layers of waxcloth that had preserved them through decades beneath the river. No author, no title, only the sentence on the opening page. If this book has been opened, the last keeper has already made a choice. Cross turned the page. The handwriting was careful, almost architectural in its precision. There were no dramatic confessions, no names highlighted in red, no accusations. Instead, every page described a decision. A box moved from one hiding place to another, a photograph entrusted to a school librarian, a tape delivered to a courthouse clerk, a ledger hidden beneath floorboards. Each entry ended with the same simple line. The chain continues. Brooks slowly exhaled. This isn't evidence. Cross looked up. It's a record of trust. As dawn broke, the notebook revealed one final section unlike the others. The handwriting changed. Newer, stronger. The first line read, "I never met the journalist. I inherited her promise." The signature at the bottom consisted of only two initials. Emer, Michael Rowan. He hadn't written about crimes. He had written about responsibility. Page after page described receiving sealed packages from people he barely knew, each carrying only one instruction. Protect this until someone asked the right question. Not if, when. Cross closed the notebook. For 30 years. They were preparing for this investigation. Ortiz finished. A folded sheet slipped from between the final pages. It wasn't another map. It was a list. Every anonymous delivery the task force had received during the reopened investigation appeared in chronological order. The fingerprint card, the motel key, the cassette, the clock tower notebook, the blueprint. Every item had a check mark beside it, except one. The final line remained blank. The letter. What letter? Brooks whispered. No one answered, because no one knew. Late that afternoon, a call came from the forensic mail unit. Another parcel had arrived. No courier had been seen. No security camera captured its delivery. The package simply appeared inside the locked intake room. Cross recognized the handwriting immediately. Neat, deliberate, almost identical to the labels recovered from the archives. Inside rested a single cream-colored envelope sealed with dark blue wax. The seal carried the same symbol found throughout the investigation. A circle, a key, a single horizontal line. Cross broke the seal. Inside was one sheet of paper. Nothing more. If you are reading this, then every fragment has found its way home. Do not search for the people who protected them. Some are gone. Some chose silence. Some never knew one another. Their names are not the story. The story survived because ordinary people refused to let it disappear. That is enough. No signature. No explanation. Just one final sentence. Close the chain by telling the truth, not about us, but about why we preserved it. The room remained silent. No hidden code. No invisible ink. No final coordinates. After months of chasing secret rooms and forgotten recordings, the last message contained no mystery at all, only purpose. Brooks carefully placed a letter into an evidence sleeve. I think this is the end. Cross looked toward the evidence wall. For the first time since reopening the investigation, every thread connected. The hidden archives, the recordings, the duplicate records, the anonymous messages, the caretakers. They had never been trying to create a legend. They had been preventing history from being erased. As evening settled over headquarters, Cross removed the dozens of photographs that had covered the evidence board since the case began. One by one, he placed them into archival boxes. The wall that had once held scattered clues now displayed a single timeline, clear, complete, and finally understandable. Outside, Snow began falling softly across the empty parking lot. A lone figure watched from across the street for a few quiet moments before turning away. No envelope, no cassette, no hidden package, only a faint smile. The chain had reached its final keeper, and for the first time in more than 30 years, there was nothing left to hide. The Forgotten Fingerprint, a fictional crime thriller. Part 13. The evidence room felt different without the wall of unanswered questions. Detective Daniel Cross stood alone beneath the dim fluorescent lights, looking at the neatly labeled archive boxes, waiting to be transferred into permanent storage. For months, every discovery had demanded another search, another theory, another sleepless night. Now the silence carried a different weight. Completion, not certainty. Understanding. Dr. Elena Brooks entered carrying a slim forensic report. I found one last inconsistency. Cross looked up. I thought we were finished. So did I? She placed a single photograph on the table. It was the very first fingerprint card that had reopened the investigation. The print is genuine, Brooks said, but something else isn't. She pointed toward the bottom corner of the card. The paper? Cross frowned. What about it? It wasn't manufactured in the year the card was supposedly filed. The room fell quiet. Someone hadn't merely preserved the fingerprint. Someone had recreated the evidence card years later using the original print. The anonymous guide, Cross murmured, that wanted to make sure we'd actually notice it. Brooks finished. The realization changed nothing about the investigation's outcome, but it revealed one final act of quiet courage. Whoever had protected the evidence had eventually realized that simply hiding the truth wasn't enough. Someone had deliberately placed it back into the system, where it could finally be found. Later that afternoon, Michael Rowan agreed to meet. Not in a police station, not in an interrogation room. He chose the abandoned railway platform where investigators had discovered the cabinet of numbered tapes. He arrived carrying nothing. No briefcase, no documents, no recorder, only a weathered coat and a tired expression. Cross approached slowly. You disappeared. Michael smiled faintly. I stayed ahead. Of who? For years I wasn't sure. He looked toward the silent tracks stretching into the distance. My father told me that sometimes protecting the truth means surviving long enough to hand it to someone else. Were you the one sending the packages? Michael nodded once. Most of them. The recordings? Some. The fingerprint? No. Cross's eyes narrowed. If it wasn't you. Michael looked down the empty railway line. The first keeper was never supposed to be known. The wind swept across the platform, carrying dry leaves along rusted rails. For years, Michael continued, I believe the chain ended with me. What changed? You. Cross frowned. I watched how your team worked. You questioned the evidence instead of forcing it to fit a theory. You trusted us. I trusted the questions. Michael reached into his coat pocket. Cross instinctively tensed. Instead of a weapon, Michael produced a small brass key. Old, worn smooth by time. I don't know what it opens, he said. It was passed to me with one instruction. He placed it in Cross's hand. When the story is finally understood, that give this to the person who asked why. Cross looked down at the key. There were no numbers, no markings, only the same small symbol that had appeared throughout the investigation. A circle, a key, a single horizontal line. Before Cross could ask another question, Michael stepped back. I'm done carrying it. You could help us identify the others. Michael slowly shook his head. They never wanted recognition. They wanted the truth to survive. He turned toward the station exit. For some stories. He paused. That's enough. Without another word, he disappeared into the fading afternoon light. Cross made no attempt to follow. Some mysteries deserved an ending. Others deserved peace. That evening, the evidence board came down for the last time. The photographs were archived, the tapes preserved, the journals sealed inside climate-controlled storage. Not forgotten. Protected. Brooks stood beside Cross as workers switched off the lights. So that's it? Cross looked at the rows of carefully labeled boxes. No, He slipped a brass key into an evidence envelope marked unidentified artifact. It's just the first time this story belongs to history instead of secret. As the heavy archive door closed with a slow metallic echo, the lights inside faded one by one, leaving only a single illuminated shelf with a fingerprint card rested alone. A quiet reminder that sometimes the smallest fragment, overlooked for decades, is enough to illuminate an entire forgotten past. The Forgotten Fingerprint, a fictional crime thriller. Part 14. Winter settled quietly over the county. The investigation had officially ended weeks earlier. Press conferences came and went. Archive boxes disappeared into secure storage. Reporters chased newer headlines. The buildings that had once echoed with hurried footsteps returned to their ordinary silence. Yet Detective Daniel Cross still found himself thinking about the brass key. It rested inside a sealed evidence envelope in his desk drawer. Unidentified, unclaimed, unexplained. For the first time in months, there was no urgency demanding that he solve it. That, more than anything else, felt unfamiliar. One evening, after everyone else had left headquarters, Cross opened the envelope once more. The brass key reflected the warm glow of his desk lamp. Its worn edges suggested decades of careful handling. Not use. Handling. It had survived because someone wanted it to. Brooke stepped into the office carrying 2 cups of coffee. I knew you'd still be here. Cross smiled. You know me too well. She glanced at the key. Still wondering? I think I always will. Brooke sat opposite him. Maybe that's the point. Over the following days, the task force completed the final catalog of recovered materials. Every cassette had been digitized, every journal preserved, every photograph restored. The anonymous network of caretakers remained unnamed, exactly as the final letter had requested. History would remember the truth they protected, not the identities they sacrificed to preserve it. Cross insisted on one final addition to the official archive, a short statement placed at the front of every evidence box. These materials survived because ordinary people chose preservation over silence. Their names are unknown by choice, and that choice will be respected. Brooks read the statement without saying a word. Then she nodded. It fits. Several weeks later, Cross received a call from the county museum. The abandoned building was finally being restored. Construction workers had discovered a small plaque hidden behind a section of damaged brickwork. The foreman thought it might belong with the archive materials. Cross and Brooks arrived that afternoon. The plaque was bronze, no larger than a notebook. Its inscription had nearly vanished beneath years of corrosion. After careful cleaning, only one sentence remained legible. Truth survives only if someone chooses to carry it. No names, no dates, no dedication. Just another quiet reminder that the story had always been larger than any single person. As restoration crews continued their work, Brooks wandered through the empty galleries. Sunlight streamed through broken windows, illuminating particles of dust that drifted lazily through the cold air. It feels different now, she said. Cross looked around. What does? The silence. Months earlier it had felt oppressive. Now it felt peaceful. The building no longer seemed haunted by unanswered questions. It simply held memories. And memories, unlike secrets, no longer demanded to be hidden. That evening, Cross returned to the railway station one last time. The tracks stretched toward the horizon, exactly as they had on the day he met Michael Rowan. No mysterious packages waited on the platform. No anonymous messages appeared beneath windshield wipers. Only the distant sound of wind moving through empty signal towers. He slipped the brass key back into his pocket. Perhaps it opened a forgotten lock somewhere. Perhaps it never had. Not every object required an explanation. Some existed only because someone believed the future deserved to inherit them. Cross turned and began walking toward his car. Halfway across the platform, he stopped. The old station clock struck the hour. Its slow mechanical chime echoed across the empty tracks before fading into the evening air. For a brief moment, he smiled. The chain was over. The story remained. And sometimes that was the closest thing any mystery ever received a perfect ending.